All right, Mr. Tony Weeks, thank you very much for coming on to theboxingbar.com and welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Tony, congratulations, first of all, man, on getting this big assignment for this coming weekend's huge mega fight between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Marcos Maidana. Before we get on into all that, though, how was it, first of all, that you got into this crazy, or got involved in this crazy, but yet beautiful sport of boxing?
Well, it was just, actually, I kind of fell into it. I worked at the federal prison in Phoenix, Arizona as a recreation supervisor, and I decided to bring up some fighters to put on an exhibition for the inmates. And when I brought everybody up and the fighters got in the ring and started sparring, it just dawned on me that I forgot to get a referee, and I just asked one of the trainers, "Hey, you mind if I get up there?" And he said, "No." I got up there and I started to officiate the exhibition. And make a long story short, at the end of the show, the trainer, Beto Martinez, asked me if I ever done that before, and I said no. He said, "Well, I think you should look into it because I had good natural movements," and gave me a number to call, and pretty much the rest is history.
And beforehand, did you have any kind of experience? I mean, did you watch boxing at all? Did you follow it as a kid growing up? Did you have any knowledge of what you're supposed to do in there and stuff like that? I mean, did you have prior knowledge of boxing at all?
Prior to that, I had never had any formal training in boxing, but I was definitely a boxing fan, so I was basically emulating Richard Steele and Mills Lane and those guys and what they did in the ring, and it worked out for me.
Now, I noticed in the ring there, when I've heard you and give out the instructions before the first bell on certain fights, I noticed that you know a little bit of Spanish. Was there some Latino in you?
Well, there is Latino in my family, but actually I did it for a tribute to the late trainer Beto Martinez, who's the one who I was telling you about, who pretty much discovered me and gave me my start. He had passed away, and as a tribute to him, I just decided just to do one line in Spanish, and when I did that one line, everybody went crazy, and so I just started to pick up different phrases of how do you say this and how do you say that, and finally put it all together.
And a little bit about you. I mean, where were you born and raised? And give us a little bit of a bio there of you.
I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I had a good childhood. I mean, living in the inner cities pretty rough, but I managed to stay out of trouble because I got into athletics at an early age. I was always interested in sports, so it wasn't really hard for me to get into athletics. But being in that playing football and running track back then, like I said, it definitely kept me out of a lot of trouble and kept me occupied and put me on the right track in terms of physical fitness and mental fitness.
And being in there, as a third man, you have to have some kind of toughness to know that you're going to be pushing away guys, yelling at guys at times, getting physical in there, separating them and stuff like that. You have to have some kind of a tough background or have a toughness to you, and at the same time being very much athletically, capable also.
Oh, yes, most definitely. It's a fight, so you definitely have to get physical sometimes. You definitely have to get verbal sometimes. And once again, I think a lot of those skills were honed growing up in the cities in New York and Brooklyn, and even working in the penitentiaries. It's you learn to de-escalate a situation when it's heated, and it's pretty much the same thing in the ring. The referee, the two combatants, they're in their fight mode, and everything is heightened, and all kinds of feelings and emotions are flowing in there. But as a referee, I have to be the calm one. I have to be the one to make sure everything goes okay.
You talked a little bit about how the first time it was for you when you were, working at, in some little boxing little cart that you guys had there. But what was it like? Let's say the first time they called you and said, you're going to be working at this professional fight. The first time that you were out there, your first outing as a referee professionally. How did you feel going into that?
Oh, I was scared to death. I was nervous, but I was elated at the same time, and it's very exciting. Um, there's one thing, starting in a smaller state like Arizona and Phoenix. Um, I used to pretend that every fight was a big fight. So I've always adapted that mentality and kept that even today. That no matter what fight I do, it's the big fight. So I look at every fight as the same. But getting that first fight, like I say, it was so surreal. I couldn't believe that it was happening, and everything just flourished from there.
Wow, so in your mind, mentally, you kind of practice. You've been practicing that this is a big fight since day number one.
Most definitely, and most definitely. I've always had that mind. At the time, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but as time went on, I begun and I started to gain more experience. I begun to see that, yeah, you definitely have to have that approach that no matter what fight you're doing, no matter how big it is, no matter how small it is, it's still the same fight, and you still have the same responsibility as a referee in enforcing the rules and first and foremost, the safety of both fighters.
And what do you remember being your first big assignment where you were first going to become on a big stage, nationally? Do you remember what your first major fight was where you said to yourself, I'm going to be recognized here somewhere by someone? Do you remember what fight that might have been?
Well, I remember the first big name fight I did, which was Tim Witherspoon. I can't remember the name of his opponent, but I was really, really excited about that, and it was on US Tuesday Night USA Boxing, and
Oh man, does that bring back memories?
yes, yes, of course. So I knew that I would be seen by a wide range of people, a big audience, and so that was really, really thrilling for me.
Now, as years were progressing and you were obviously, becoming more into the sport, getting more into the sport, starting to, get more fights as time went. At this time, what did you say to yourself? Did you say, I made the right choice by doing this? Or were you still kind of skeptical if you should stay a referee in time? Or did you ever think that maybe I should go do something else at any time?
No, from day one, when that thought came into a reality, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And there's one thing when we put on that boxing exhibition, the prison, I have it on tape. And when I look at it today, I don't look too much different than what I look now. And now I can see what Benson Martinez saw in me. And so, yeah.
One of the times I remember you the most, and I think a lot of people, probably one of the best fights I will ever see when Diego Corrales fought Jose Luis Castillo is like a standout fight, even though you've been refereeing for over a decade at the time. But, a lot of people, for some reason, they say that fight. What do you remember about that particular fight that a lot of people always talk about and will always talk about? And you just happen to be that third man for that fight. You were in between those two guys being in there, what were your experiences like? What do you remember of that fight?
Wow. I mean, what a blessing to be able to officiate a fight of that magnitude. I just remember the nonstop back and forth action. Corrales and Castillo were dealing out equal amount of punishment to each other. It wasn't a one-sided fight at all. And that fight right there, at the time, when you're going through it, you even though you're going through one heck of a fight, it still doesn't really dawn into you because you're so focused on the fight. It didn't really hit me till afterwards of wow, what a fight that I was in. Possibly one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing, and to be able to be a part of that, and not only to be a part of it, but have a integral part of that fight was truly, truly a blessing. It definitely put me on the map.
And I was talking to Robert Garcia when we had a fight card here in Oxnard, and we brought up how he lost his title to Diego Corrales, and then we happened to bring up what he thought about losing to him. And he says, man, after seeing the greatest fight I've ever seen when he fought Castillo, I don't mind losing to him. I mean, that's how big of a fight, that was, is for a top trainer like that to bring up a fight like that as the best fight that he's ever seen. Um, was that? Would you say that fight was a hard fight to officiate because it was just hard that you had to maybe get in there physically, or was it easy for you because you pretty much sat back and just watched these guys phone booth it for the whole fight, pretty much?
Well, no fight is really easy when you're going through it in real time. But that fight, pretty much, I just had to sit back and let those guys fight and just make sure nobody's breaking any rules or regulations. But it was the intensity of the fight was so high, it was unreal. If you remember in that fight, Corrales' eye started to swell up. So I was paying close attention, to his eye. One time, I went over to his corner just to make sure he was okay. So the intensity in any fight, it's never really an easy fight when you're going through it in real time. Afterwards, when you sit back and say, "Oh well, okay, everything went well, no problem," and you're just satisfied, with the results. But that fight, you just let those. They were very clean. There were no fouls in there, and just guys are just going at it.
And I remember towards the end of the fight there was the mouthpiece thing where it kept coming out of Corrales' mouth, and people were thinking he's using that to buy some time there.
Well, whether he was or not, we'll never know. But the mouthpiece did come out twice, and had to put it back in. And I did deduct a point from Corrales for doing that. Um, who knows if that helped him or not? We don't know. The thing about it is, when you look at both the knockdowns, when he went down the first time, he's looking at me. His head is clear, his eyes are clear, and he's focused and he's answering me. And he gets up and he's ready to go. Even in the second knockdown, his eyes were clear and his head was clear, and he was still focused. So I don't know if it really helped or not, but it was still one heck of a fight.
The fight obviously once it finished, everybody went crazy. I'm sure, people at Castillo's corner probably felt, he could have kept going, but it didn't really matter. At the end of the fight, everybody just knew it was something special, and that everybody was going to remember that particular night. And we have what we did, and Tony Weeks was a part of it.
Yes, it was a total shock for me because the ending just seemed like it just came so quick. At one moment, I'm watching Corrales and looking at stopping the fight because he's going down, and after a really really hard fought fight, and then all of a sudden Corrales comes out of nowhere and hurts Castillo. And next thing I know, Castillo's up against the ropes and his hands are down, and I'm jumping in and stopping the fight. And I'm gonna tell you, the crowd went berserk. There was about 5,000 people there, and it felt like it was 20,000 when people were yelling and screaming and just went mad.
Wow, and you kept going with these action fights with Vasquez and Larios later that year. I think you got like their third fight, and you got that assignment as well as Pacquiao and Barrera down the line, and Juan Manuel Marquez, and you've had these top fighters for since then, and you've had these top assignments, and I'm sure a lot of them stem from all these fights from that particular fight that everybody remembered. And you just kind of flourished since then, and you've been in every fight you could think. You could talk about Floyd Mayweather or Pacquiao or Juan Manuel Marquez, or you've done the best of them. How do you feel when you really look back at that and you're starting to think to yourself, "Wow, and doing what I do in my career, I'm up there. I'm at the top." How does that feel when you really think about that?
Well, it's still so surreal to me. I can't believe I'm doing what I'm doing, and looking back at everything and looking at the journey that I have come to up until this point. Yes, I've had the blessing to officiate some of the greatest fighters in the world. Not only some of the greatest fighters in the world, but some of the greatest fighters in the history of boxing. And like I said, it's still so surreal to me. My career has been such a blessing, and the way I was brought up, the way I came up, and having the right people around me, the right mentors, it's just great. I was truly blessed.
Every time we watch these fights go on TV or whatnot, we have this great camera view that we watch on TV. We really think that we're seeing the best angle or we have the best look at these fights. But we don't get all the audio. We don't get all the sounds that you hear in the ring, being a third man, like the fighters when they moan and groan and, the sounds of the hard impacts of the punches. We don't get any of that. Does that make a difference while you're in there to make a better assessment than anybody else as a third man, as a referee? Does that help you out hearing all that stuff, all the audio that maybe we don't get on TV?
Oh, of course. I mean, you could be sitting at ringside, but you cannot see or hear what a referee is seeing and hearing. Definitely, we're right up there in the action. And, we hear and see everything. So, when a fighter is in trouble or he's hurt, and whether he's making a groaning sound or moaning sound or what have you, something that, like you say, people on the outside can't hear and see. And when we get in there to stop a fight, they're wondering why we're doing it, but they don't understand because they can't see and understand the way we're looking at it.
If you can remember or throw out a few matches that stand out, some of the matches that you had to physically, get into a lot, or let's say, was hard for you physically to control in your career, what fights, would you say were the most difficult for you?
Well, I definitely had a few of those, but the two that really stand out are the two fights I had with Bernard Hopkins. The first one with Antoine Eccles, and the second one with the rematch with Roy Jones Jr. Everybody knows Bernard. Bernard's going to really, really put you through the ringer and really test you as an official. And both times I was definitely tested. Actually, the first time with Antoine Eccles, I had really never experienced something like that in the ring before. And it was a blessing in disguise because, first and foremost, it showed me what I was capable of doing. And it definitely showed the boxing public that I could handle a tough fight.
That's exactly true. I think that's why I asked, because sometimes these difficult fights give you that extra experience. After those type of fights, you say to yourself, man, I've seen it all type of thing. And I'm sure that's probably what those fights did.
Oh, yeah. Well, you never stop learning. But with each time out, you gain more experience. I have the old saying, what my grandfather used to tell me, if you haven't learned anything new, you're not paying attention.
And name some of the fights that you think that really, in your opinion, if you had to throw something on your resume to show what you've done, what are some of those fights that you would throw on your resume where you say, I think these fights made me or defined me in some way? There's probably like 20 or 30 or 50 of them, but which ones are the standout ones that you would throw on your resume, any day of the week?
I mean, of course, all the Pacquiao fights, all the Mayweather fights, Pacquiao and De La Hoya. But I have yet to experience a fight like the first fight with Corrales Castillo. So Corrales Castillo one would always be that icing on the cake. That's top shelf for me.
Referees get bashed so much for everything nowadays. If you read all the stories that you see on Facebook or wherever it might be after a fight, people are always bashing referees. They stopped the fight too early. They stopped it too late. They did this, they did that. Does that hurt you whenever you see someone, come at you sideways, with fights and what they thought of your officiating and stuff, or do you just kind of like turn your back on them and just say, just let them talk type of thing?
Not really. I mean, first and foremost, being a referee, being an official in any sport, really, is a thankless job. So when you accept this job, when you take this job, you have to know and understand what comes with it. And I know and I understand that. You can make the right call, and somebody's going to not be satisfied or be angry or be mad. But what you have to really look at is that the general public really doesn't understand your job. And what I mean by that is, first and foremost, like I say, we have the responsibility of those fighters' lives in our hands. And the general public doesn't. So if they if the public had that same responsibility like we have, they would have a totally different mentality, a totally different outlook, on a fight. And that's why it's easy for someone to criticize an official, to say this, to say that, because they don't bear the same responsibility that we do as an official. So it doesn't really bother me anyway because I have the utmost confidence in my abilities and what I do. And this is not to say that I don't make mistakes. Of course, we're human. But when it comes to officials, we are held to the highest standards. We have to get it right every single time out. And if everybody was held to those same standards, they wouldn't be so quick to criticize anyone.
That's very true. And when you get these assignments, let's say like this coming weekend, as we spoke of at the beginning of the interview, you have the big fight between Marcos Maidana and Floyd Mayweather Jr., and you pretty much can't go any higher than that in boxing today with guys like Floyd Mayweather. When you get these calls that you're going to be officiating stuff like that, fights like that of that magnitude, how does that make you feel inside? Is that just another day in the office for you, or are you just like, oh, cool, it's just another one, and there's pretty much no higher that you can get now, or more than that? How do you take that when you get stuff like that, or those assignments?
Well, it's obvious when you get a top-notch assignment from the commission, it's a compliment that they have the utmost respect for you as an official and confidence in you as an official that they would assign you to these big assignments. But like I alluded to before, I look at every fight as the same when it comes to the fight itself. However, I know and recognize, the magnitude of this fight and any other big fight. But in general, I just look at it, as a blessing that, someone has the confidence in my ability to assign me to these fights.
And I'm sure you're going to do a great job this weekend, as you always do, Tony. And I appreciate your time to coming on to theboxingbar.com. A few months ago, I had Richard Steele, who will be inducted to the International Boxing Hall of Fame this year, as other Hall of Famer referees that have been in the past, in the recent past, like Mills Lane. And I'm sure down the line, once it's all said and done, I will be seeing Tony Weeks be inducted down the line, and you would deserve that moment at that time. And I absolutely know that you will be up there one day, and you should be up there. And Tony, thank you very much for coming on to theboxingbar.com and doing this interview for us, and getting to know you, and finally having you on to talk a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to come out and speak, and it's always good to try to enlighten the general public as much as you can. And sometimes when people just know Tony Weeks the referee and don't get a chance to know Tony Weeks the person, Tony Weeks the man. And I appreciate your kind words about the Hall of Fame. I hope I would love to someday be graced with that. And I'm very, very proud of Mills Lane and Richard Steele and a lot of the other referees who are in the Hall of Fame, who are going in the Hall of Fame. And it will be a truly, truly honor to really cap one's career in being immortalized with some of the greatest people in boxing at the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
And I had Richard Steele on here a few times, and the second time was pretty much to congratulate him on getting the news that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. The first time I had him on was to do a rundown on his life and what he went through or whatnot, and then we talked in detail about some of the biggest fights that he's ever officiated and refereed, and we talked into several of them in detail. Hopefully down the line you can come back on, my friend, and we could go down the line and get some of the insights on some of the fights you've officiated on the past. And I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in getting that rundown, getting those details intact.
Most definitely, and I would like to say Richard Steele is definitely one of my mentors, and he's always called me, giving me advice, and even to this day, and I take heed to everything he has to offer, as well as a lot of other referees like Joe Cortez
and they all deserve that spot in the Hall of Fame that they've got, and you will too one day, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.